What if you could see it all? Every choice you ever made, every word you ever said, every path you didn't take. What if there was a place that held the full story of your life, not just the parts you remember, but the reasons why, the hidden feelings, the forgotten moments? Is there a cosmic ledger of our triumphs and our deepest regrets? A place where every soul's journey is written down, waiting to be read. What would you do if you could access it? Would you seek answers, or would you be afraid of what you might find? Number 16, is there a cosmic library of everything? The term Akashic originates from the Sanskrit word Akasha, which means ether or sky. In some ancient philosophies, Akasha was considered the fifth element, the primordial substance from which all things are formed. The concept is often compared to a universal supercomputer, the spiritual equivalent of the internet, or a vast metaphysical library. Believers do not claim it has a physical location you can travel to. It is said to exist on a non-physical plane of existence. The core idea is that this record contains not just actions, but every thought, emotion, and intent behind those actions. So, what are the Akashic Records? The simplest way to describe them is as a complete vibrational record of every soul and its journey. This isn't just about human souls. The belief extends to everything. Every animal, every plant, every rock, every planet, every galaxy. Everything that has a form of consciousness, no matter how basic, is said to have its history imprinted in this field. It's a living, dynamic body of information. It's not a dusty old book on a shelf. It's constantly being updated in real time. Every moment, every choice, every thought adds a new layer to the record. The library analogy is the most common one used to explain it. Picture a library that is infinite. It has no walls, no ceiling, no floor. In this library, there is a book for every soul that has ever existed or will ever exist. Your book contains your complete history. It details every life you've ever lived, if you believe in reincarnation. It explains the contracts and agreements your soul made before this life. It holds the wisdom gained from every experience. It's the ultimate biography, written not with ink, but with energy and consciousness. According to this belief system, the information isn't stored in a linear way like a history textbook. It's holographic. Every piece of the record contains the information of the whole. This means that when someone accesses the records, they are not just reading a page. They are experiencing the information. They might see images, hear sounds, or feel the emotions associated with the event they are viewing. It's a full sensory experience. The purpose of this record is not for judgment. There is no cosmic judge tallying up good and bad deeds. Instead, it's seen as a neutral, objective tool for understanding and growth. It's a resource for souls to learn from their past, understand their present, and make more conscious choices for their future. The information is there to help a soul evolve. It's a record of cause and effect, a map of a soul's journey back to its source. This concept forms the foundation for why people believe they can read it. If it exists and holds all this knowledge, then there must be a way to access it. Number 15, where did the modern idea come from? The popularization of the term Akashic Records in the Western world is surprisingly recent. It doesn't come directly from ancient Hindu or Buddhist texts in the way we use it today. The founder of the Theosophical Society, Helena Blavatsky, who lived in the late 1800s, never actually used the exact phrase Akashic Records in her extensive writings. She referred to indestructible tablets of the astral light and other similar concepts, laying the groundwork for the idea. The person who really coined and popularized the term was Rudolf Steiner, an Austrian philosopher and esotericist who was initially a prominent theosophist before breaking away to form his own movement, Anthroposophy. The Theosophical Society, founded in 1875, was a movement that aimed to synthesize Eastern mysticism, Western esotericism, and science. Blavatsky claimed to receive her knowledge from hidden masters, or Mahatmas, in Tibet. She wrote about a universal memory of nature, a subtle medium that records all events. She described it as a kind of photographic plate that captures everything that happens. This was a revolutionary idea for many in the Victorian era who were caught between strict religious dogma and the rise of scientific materialism. Theosophy offered a third way, a spiritual path that incorporated concepts like karma, reincarnation, and hidden planes of existence. It was within this environment that the idea of a cosmic record took hold, Alfred Percy Sinnett, another early theosophist, wrote in his 1883 book Esoteric Buddhism about a permanent record of all that has taken place on Earth. He described a stupendous memory of nature that was accessible to initiated individuals. But it was Rudolf Steiner who, in the early 1900s, explicitly used the term Akashic Record or Akashic Chronicle. He wrote extensively about his supposed ability to read this chronicle. He claimed it allowed him to perceive spiritual events and the history of humanity, including lost periods like Atlantis and Lemuria. For Steiner, the Akashic Record was not just a historical logbook, it was a living spiritual reality. He believed that through specific meditative practices and moral development, anyone could develop the spiritual sight needed to read it. So, the modern concept as we know it is a product of this late 19th and early 20th century spiritual revival. It was born from a blend of Eastern philosophical concepts filtered through a Western esoteric lens. It provided a framework for understanding past lives and a person's spiritual purpose that was separate from mainstream religion. It wasn't an ancient tradition passed down, unchanged for millennia. It was a new synthesis, a new name for an older, more nebulous idea, shaped and defined by these specific thinkers who were trying to map out the unseen spiritual world. This specific formulation is what people today draw upon when they talk about reading the Akashic Records. Number 14. Are there older roots for this idea? While the term Akashic Records is modern, the core concept of a celestial record book is ancient and appears in many different cultures and religions. The idea that human deeds are recorded by a divine entity is a recurring theme throughout history. In ancient Egypt, it was believed that after death, the heart of the deceased was weighed against the feather of Ma'at, the goddess of truth and justice. The god Thoth, the scribe of the gods, would record the result. This implies a lifelong record of a person's actions was kept and reviewed. In ancient Mesopotamia, there was the concept of the tablets of destiny, which held the fate of gods and men and were inscribed by the god Nabu. The most direct parallel comes from Abrahamic religions. The idea of a book of life is mentioned several times in the Hebrew Bible and the New Testament. In the book of Psalms, it is written, "Your eyes saw my unformed substance in your book were written, every one of them, the days that were formed for me, when as yet there were none of them." In the Christian book of Revelation, there is a description of a final judgment where books are opened and another book is opened, which is the book of life. The dead are judged according to what is written in the books, according to their works. This celestial ledger contains the names of those who will receive eternal life, but it also functions as a record of deeds. In Islamic tradition, there is a similar concept. It is believed that two angels, known as the Kirman Katibin, accompany each person and record their good and bad deeds. These records will be presented on the Day of Judgment. The Quran mentions the preserved tablet, al-Lawh al-Mahfuz, a celestial tablet upon which God has written the destiny of all creation before it was created. This contains everything that has happened and will happen. These concepts, while theologically different from the modern New Age idea of the Akashic Records, share a fundamental premise. They all propose that human life is observed and recorded on a plane beyond the physical. The primary difference lies in the purpose and accessibility of the record. In most traditional religions, the record is divine, kept by God or angels, and is primarily for the purpose of judgment after death. It is generally not considered accessible to living mortals. The modern concept of the Akashic Records reframes this idea. It removes the element of a judging God and transforms the record into a neutral, universal source of information. It also democratizes access, suggesting that with the right training or innate ability, any human can read it for the purpose of self-understanding and spiritual growth, not just to await a final judgment. The seed of the idea is ancient, but the way it has grown and blossomed in modern spirituality is quite different. Number 13, how is it supposed to work? The explanation for how the Akashic Records work is rooted in metaphysical and esoteric concepts, not in conventional science. The fundamental principle is that everything in the universe is energy, and all energy vibrates at a certain frequency. According to this belief, every action, thought, and emotion generates a unique vibrational signature. These signatures are not temporary. They don't just disappear. Instead, they are imprinted permanently onto a subtle substance, the Akasha. This Akasha is seen as the underlying fabric of reality, a field of energy that permeates and connects everything. Think of it like sound waves. When you speak, you create vibrations in the air. Those vibrations travel and can be recorded. In the same way, the theory goes, our lives create vibrations in the Akasha, and the Akasha itself is the recording medium. It's a passive but perfect recording device. It doesn't interpret or judge, it just records the energetic imprint of what happened. This is why it's often described as a vibrational archive. So, how does a person read these vibrations? The process is said to be about consciousness, not about physical senses. The reader's consciousness must be able to attune itself to the specific frequency of the Akashic field. It's like tuning a radio. The air is filled with countless radio waves, but you only hear the station your radio is tuned to. Similarly, a person wanting to access the records must learn to shift their own state of consciousness to resonate with the Akasha. This usually involves entering a deep meditative or trance-like state. In this state, the normal chatter of the conscious mind is quieted, allowing the more subtle perceptions of the intuitive or higher self to come forward. The information is not received through the eyes or ears. It is perceived directly by consciousness. This is why people who claim to read the records often describe the experience in non-linear and multisensory ways. They might see a scene from a past life as if they are watching a movie. They might hear a conversation, or they might simply have a strong feeling or a sudden knowing about something. The information is downloaded directly, in a sense. The reader acts as a translator, converting these energetic impressions into words, images, and concepts that can be understood by the person they are reading for. The belief is that everyone has the innate ability to connect with the records, because every soul is part of this universal field. The challenge is learning how to quiet the mind, raise one's own vibration, and intentionally tune into this vast sea of information. Number 12. Who was the most famous reader? Without a doubt, the most famous and well-documented individual associated with reading the Akashic Records was Edgar Cayce. Born in Kentucky in 1877, Cayce was a simple man with a limited education who became known as the Sleeping Prophet. Over 14,306 of his psychic readings were transcribed and preserved before his death in 1945. These readings form one of the largest and most intriguing bodies of psychic information ever recorded. Cayce himself was a devout Christian and struggled for much of his life to reconcile his psychic abilities with his faith. He never profited from his readings, accepting only what was needed to support his family and his work. Cayce's method was unique. He would lie down on a couch, loosen his clothing, and put himself into a sleep-like trance. Once he was in this state, his wife, Gertrude, or later his secretary, Gladys Davis, would give him the name and location of a person who had requested a reading. The person didn't even have to be in the room. From this trance state, Cayce could apparently access a universal source of information to answer questions about the person's health or their spiritual life. When asked about the source of his information, his trance self explained that it came from two main places: the subconscious mind of the individual he was reading for, and the Akashic Records, which he sometimes called the Book of God's Remembrances. His readings covered an astonishing range of subjects. Initially, they were almost exclusively focused on health. Cayce, in his trance, would diagnose complex medical conditions that often baffled doctors and would prescribe detailed and often unconventional treatments. These included specific diets, herbal remedies, osteopathic adjustments, and poultices. Many people credited these readings with saving their lives. Later, his readings expanded to include topics like past lives, soul purpose, dream interpretation, ancient history, and even prophecies about the future. The life readings were particularly fascinating. Cayce would describe a person's previous incarnations in different historical periods, explaining how their actions and relationships in those past lives were influencing their current circumstances, talents, and challenges. He saw the Akashic Records as a tool for understanding karma, not as a system of punishment, but as a system of memory and learning, where the soul continuously works to overcome its weaknesses and develop its virtues. The sheer volume and detail of Cayce's work have made him a central figure in the study of psychic phenomena and the primary example people point to when discussing the practical application of reading the Akashic Records. His life and work are preserved and studied by his organization, the Association for Research and Enlightenment, ARE, which continues to operate today. Number 11. What do people claim to see in there? When people claim to access the Akashic Records, they describe seeing a wide spectrum of information, often far beyond what could be known through normal means. The most common type of information sought and received relates to past lives. A person might learn about an incarnation as a Roman soldier, a medieval farmer, or a scribe in ancient Egypt. These are not just fanciful stories. The readings often include specific details about the time period, the person's role in society, key relationships, and the major challenges they faced. The purpose of revisiting these lives is usually to understand present-day patterns. For example, an unexplained fear of water in this life might be traced back to a drowning in a previous life. A difficult relationship with a family member might be explained by a past life conflict with the same soul. Another major area of inquiry is soul purpose and life path. People often ask questions like, what am I here to do? Or what is my true calling? The information from the records might reveal a soul's overarching mission or the key lessons it chose to learn in this particular lifetime. It might point towards certain careers, relationships, or creative pursuits that are in alignment with that soul's purpose. It's not about being told a fixed destiny, but rather about understanding one's innate gifts and the energetic currents that support their fulfillment. It can provide a sense of clarity and direction for someone feeling lost or unfulfilled. People also seek healing for present-day issues. This can be physical, emotional, or spiritual. A reading might reveal the energetic root of a chronic illness, tracing it back to a past life trauma or a deeply held emotional pattern in this life. It might uncover the origin of a phobia, an addiction, or a self-sabotaging behavior. By bringing this unconscious information to light, the belief is that the person can then begin to heal it. The awareness itself is seen as a powerful first step. The records are also said to contain information about future possibilities. This is a tricky area. Most practitioners say that the future is not set in stone. The records show probable futures based on a person's current energy and trajectory. They show the likely outcome if a person continues on their current path. By seeing these possibilities, a person can make different choices to create a more desirable future. It's not about fortune-telling in the traditional sense, but about using insight into potential outcomes to empower present-day decision-making. The information is vast, covering everything from the grand scope of a soul's multi-life journey to the subtle energetic dynamics of a single relationship. Number 10. Is it just about people? The concept of the Akashic Records is not limited to human souls. The underlying philosophy is that everything that exists has a form of consciousness and therefore has a record in the Akasha. This expands the scope of what can be read to an almost unimaginable degree. Believers hold that one can access the records of animals, plants, places, and even inanimate objects. The idea is that everything has an energetic history, a story imprinted in the universal field. For example, a practitioner might attempt to access the Akashic record of a pet. This could be done to understand a behavioral issue, discover the source of an illness, or learn about the animal's past lives and its soul connection to its human companion. The reading might reveal that a rescue dog's fear of men is linked to abuse from a male owner in its past, or that a cat's deep bond with a person stems from a shared history across several lifetimes. The records of places are another area of exploration. This involves tuning into the energy of a specific location, like a house, a piece of land, or a historic site. A reading for a house might reveal the history of its previous occupants, uncovering energetic imprints left behind by strong emotions or significant events that took place there. This is sometimes used to explain why a place might feel haunted or have a certain atmosphere. By understanding the history recorded in the location's Akasha, a person might perform an energetic clearing to release old, stagnant energy. On a grander scale, some claim to be able to read the Akashic record of the planet Earth itself. This would involve accessing the collective history of the planet, its geological changes, the evolution of life, and the rise and fall of civilizations. People who do this kind of work might look for information about ancient lost civilizations, the planet's spiritual purpose, or potential future paths for humanity as a whole. Even an object, like a crystal or an antique piece of jewelry, is said to have its own Akashic record. A reading might reveal the object's history, where it came from, who has owned it, and what events it has been a part of. The belief is that objects absorb the energy of their environment and owners, and this history can be accessed. This all stems from the core idea that Akasha is a universal medium. If everything is made of energy and leaves a vibrational imprint, then nothing is excluded. The entire universe, in all its parts, is writing its autobiography in real time. Number 9, how do people try to access it? There is no single, universally agreed upon method for accessing the Akashic Records. However, most approaches share common elements focused on altering one state of consciousness to move beyond the everyday thinking mind. The most fundamental tool is meditation. A person must be able to quiet the internal dialogue and achieve a state of deep relaxation and stillness. This is the foundation upon which other techniques are built. The goal is to shift from the beta brainwave state of normal waking consciousness to the alpha or theta states, which are associated with relaxation, intuition, and creativity. One popular method involves a specific prayer or invocation. A group called the Akashic Knowing School of Wisdom, founded by Linda Howe, popularized a specific method called the pathway prayer process. This is a scripted prayer that the person reads aloud. The prayer is designed to act as a key, a specific vibrational sequence that is said to open a portal to the records. It typically involves stating one's own name and then asking for the records to be opened, with the intention of receiving information for the highest good. Once the records are opened, the person sits in a receptive state, allowing information to flow in. When the session is over, another prayer is read to formally close the records. Many practitioners believe this formal process of opening and closing creates a sacred and protected space for the work. Another common approach is through guided visualization. A teacher or a recording will lead the person on a mental journey. The journey often involves classic archetypal imagery. For example, the person might be guided to visualize themselves walking down a path, arriving at a beautiful temple or a vast library. They are met by a guide or a guardian of the records who grants them access. They then find their personal book or crystal of records and are able to ask questions and receive information. This method uses the power of the imagination as a gateway to deeper states of consciousness. Some people access the records through hypnosis or a self-induced trance state, similar to the method used by Edgar Cayce. This involves a deeper level of disassociation from the conscious mind. It often requires a hypnotherapist or a trained facilitator to guide the person into the trance and ask questions on their behalf. Other, more intuitive individuals may not need a formal technique at all. They might be able to access the information spontaneously through dreams, during creative activities, or by simply setting a clear intention and then paying attention to the thoughts, feelings, and images that arise. Regardless of the specific technique, the core components are intention, relaxation, and receptivity. The person must clearly intend to access the records for a positive purpose, relax the body and mind, and be open to receiving information in whatever form it comes. Number 8. What does a reading actually feel like? The subjective experience of reading the Akashic Records varies greatly from person to person and even from session to session. It's rarely as straightforward as reading a book. The information is energetic, and it is translated by the reader's consciousness through their own unique set of filters and sensitivities. For many, the experience is primarily visual. They might see mental images, which can be as vivid and clear as a movie or as fleeting and symbolic as a dream. They might see scenes from a past life play out, or they might see symbolic images that represent a certain concept or energy. For others, the experience is more auditory. They might hear information in the form of a voice, either their own internal voice or what sounds like an external one. This is known as clairaudience. The information might come through as single words, full sentences, or even songs. It's a direct transmission of information in auditory form. A large part of the experience is often clairsentience, which means clear feeling. This is where the reader feels the information in their own body. They might feel the emotions of the person they are reading for, or the emotions associated with a past event. They might experience physical sensations like a tightness in their chest that corresponds to a past life injury, or a feeling of warmth and expansion when connecting with a positive memory. This can be very powerful and sometimes overwhelming as the reader is empathically experiencing the energy of the record. Sometimes the information comes as a sudden knowing, a concept called claircognizance. In this case, there are no images, sounds, or feelings. The reader simply knows something to be true without any logical explanation for how they know it. The information arrives in their mind fully formed as a complete packet of understanding. It's an instant download of insight. Often, a reading is a combination of all these senses. A reader might see an image, feel an associated emotion, and then receive a block of knowing that explains the context of it all. The state of consciousness during a reading is often described as a feeling of expanded awareness, of being connected to something much larger than oneself. There can be a sense of peace, love, and profound neutrality. The information is said to be delivered without judgment, simply as a statement of what is. The challenge for the reader is to stay out of their own way, to trust the information that comes through, and to translate it as clearly and accurately as possible without letting their own opinions or biases color the message. Number 7. Why do people believe in this so strongly? The deep-seated belief in the Akashic Records often comes from a powerful human need for meaning, purpose, and understanding in a world that can often feel chaotic and random. Life is full of suffering, unexplained challenges, and questions that have no easy answers. The concept of the Akashic Records provides a comprehensive framework that can give meaning to these experiences. It suggests that nothing is random. Every event, every relationship, every challenge is part of a larger soul plan. For someone struggling with a difficult illness or a painful loss, the idea that their soul chose this experience for a specific reason, for growth, can be incredibly comforting and empowering. It shifts the perspective from being a victim of circumstance to being an active participant in one's own spiritual evolution. Another powerful driver of belief is personal experience. Many people who believe in the records do so because they have had a reading that resonated with them on a profound level. They may have been told something about their past or their inner life that the reader could not possibly have known through normal means. This validation of their private experience can be a transformative moment. When a reading provides a piece of information that unlocks a lifelong pattern or explains a deep-seated fear, the experience feels authentic and true, regardless of whether it can be proven scientifically. This subjective validation is often more powerful than any external proof or skepticism. The desire for healing is also a key factor. Many people turn to the Akashic Records when conventional methods of healing, whether medical or psychological space, have failed to resolve their issues. They are looking for a deeper root cause. The records offer a narrative that can identify the source of trauma, whether it's from early childhood in this life or from a past life. The belief is that by understanding the origin of a wound, one can begin to heal it on an energetic level. This provides hope and a sense of agency to people who may have felt hopeless. Furthermore, the concept aligns with a broader spiritual worldview that has become increasingly popular. Ideas like reincarnation, karma, and the interconnectedness of all things are central to many New Age and alternative spiritualities. The Akashic Records fit neatly into this worldview, serving as the operating system or the database that makes all of it work. It provides a mechanism for how karma is tracked and how lessons are carried over from one life to another. For those who already subscribe to these related beliefs, the Akashic Records are a logical and necessary component of their spiritual cosmology. It satisfies both the heart's need for meaning and the mind's desire for a coherent system that explains the mysteries of life. Number 6. What is the scientific perspective? From a scientific standpoint, there is no evidence to support the existence of the Akashic Records. The concept is considered a pseudoscience because it is not based on the scientific method. Claims made about the records are not falsifiable, meaning they cannot be tested or proven wrong. If a reader provides information that is incorrect or cannot be verified, it can be explained away by saying the reader misinterpreted the information, the connection was poor, or the information was symbolic. There is no objective way to measure or detect the Akasha or the energetic imprints it supposedly holds. Science relies on empirical evidence data that can be observed, measured, and replicated. No one has ever been able to demonstrate the ability to access the Akashic Records under controlled, double-blind laboratory conditions. A proper scientific test would involve presenting a reader with a series of unknown subjects and having them provide specific, verifiable information that they could not have known otherwise. Such experiments have been conducted for various psychic phenomena like remote viewing and telepathy, with results that are generally inconclusive or within the range of statistical chance. The claims made about the Akashic Records, which involve details of past lives in ancient civilizations, are even more difficult, if not impossible, to verify. Psychologists and skeptics offer several alternative explanations for the experiences people have during Akashic Record readings. One of the most common is the concept of cold reading. This is a technique used by mentalists and some psychics where they make high-probability guesses and vague statements that can apply to a wide range of people. They then read the client's reactions, their body language, tone of voice, and verbal feedback to refine their statements, creating the illusion that they have specific psychic knowledge. The client, wanting the reading to be true, actively helps the reader by finding meaning and personal relevance in these general statements. Another psychological explanation is confirmation bias, the tendency to favor and recall information that confirms one's pre-existing beliefs. If someone already believes in past lives, they are more likely to interpret the images and feelings that arise during a meditation or reading as genuine past life memories. They may also be experiencing cryptomnesia, a memory bias where a person mistakenly believes a forgotten memory is a new inspiration. A detail about ancient Rome that surfaces in a reading could simply be a memory from a history book or a movie that the person has long since forgotten they saw. The brain is not a perfect recording device. It constructs and reconstructs memories, often blending fact with imagination. From a scientific perspective, the experience of accessing the Akashic Records is seen as a product of these known psychological processes rather than a connection to a non-physical library of cosmic information. Number 5, could it be just a metaphor? Another way to approach the Akashic Records is to view the concept not as a literal, external library, but as a powerful metaphor for something deep within the human psyche. This perspective bridges the gap between the believer's profound experience and the skeptic's demand for external proof. In this view, accessing the Akashic Records is a way of describing the process of accessing the vast, untapped resources of the subconscious mind and the collective unconscious. The concept of the collective unconscious was developed by the Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung. He proposed that, in addition to our personal unconscious, which is filled with our own forgotten memories and repressed experiences, there is a deeper layer of the psyche that is shared by all of humanity. This collective unconscious contains archetypes universal, archaic patterns and images that are the common inheritance of all people. These archetypes manifest in our myths, religions, fairy tales, and dreams. They include figures like the wise old man, the hero, the mother, and the trickster. From this perspective, when a person has an Akashic Record reading and sees a past life as a warrior, they might not be accessing a literal historical record. Instead, they could be tapping into the warrior archetype within their own psyche. The story of the past life becomes a powerful narrative that allows them to explore themes of courage, conflict, and strength in their own life. The record is not external. It is an internal, symbolic language of the soul. The process of the reading becomes a form of active imagination, a therapeutic technique Jung used to engage with the unconscious. Viewing it as a metaphor does not diminish the power or validity of the experience for the individual. A story does not have to be literally true to be meaningful and transformative. The narrative of a past life can provide a framework for understanding current challenges and can unlock real emotional healing. It can help a person reframe their personal story, giving them a sense of purpose and connection to something larger than their immediate everyday self. The library is within. The books are the archetypal stories that live in the human soul. The reading is the process of learning to listen to one's own deep intuition and the ancient wisdom that resides in the collective human experience. This interpretation allows for the profound, life-changing nature of the experience without requiring a belief in a non-physical, supernatural information field. It places the power and the mystery squarely within the depths of human consciousness itself. Number 4, what are the dangers or pitfalls? While many people report positive and healing experiences with the Akashic Records, there are potential dangers and pitfalls to be aware of. One of the most significant risks is encountering fraudulent or unskilled practitioners. Because there is no regulation, certification, or objective way to measure skill in this field, anyone can claim to be an Akashic record reader. An unscrupulous person could exploit a vulnerable client's trust, providing false information for financial gain. They might use cold reading techniques to create a convincing but ultimately meaningless session, or worse, they might intentionally manipulate a client by giving them frightening or disempowering information. Even with a well-intentioned but unskilled reader, there can be problems. A reader who has not done their own psychological and spiritual work might project their own issues, biases, and unhealed trauma onto the client. They might misinterpret symbolic information as literal fact, leading to confusion and anxiety for the person receiving the reading. For example, seeing an image of a client being in a prison in a past life could be a metaphor for feeling trapped in their current job, but an unskilled reader might present it as a literal historical event, causing unnecessary distress. There is also the risk of psychological dependency. A person might start to rely on readings to make every decision in their life, big or small. Instead of learning to trust their own intuition and take responsibility for their choices, they outsource their personal power to a reader or to the records themselves. This can become a spiritual crutch that prevents genuine personal growth. They might get caught in a cycle of seeking more and more readings to find the perfect answer, rather than engaging with the messy, uncertain reality of life. Another pitfall is the potential for fatalism or spiritual bypassing. If a person is told that a difficult situation is due to karma from a past life, they might passively accept their suffering rather than taking practical steps to change their circumstances. They might use the spiritual explanation as a way to avoid dealing with the real-world issues at hand. This is a form of spiritual bypassing, where spiritual ideas are used to sidestep difficult emotional work and practical responsibilities. The information from a reading should ideally be empowering and lead to conscious action, not resignation. It's crucial for anyone exploring the Akashic Records to maintain a healthy sense of discernment, to trust their own inner authority above all else, and to use the information as a tool for self-reflection, not as an infallible command. Number 3, how has the idea changed over time? The concept of the Akashic Records has undergone a significant transformation since it was first introduced to the Western world by theosophists like Rudolf Steiner. In its early days, accessing the records was seen as an incredibly difficult and advanced spiritual practice. It was believed to be a skill reserved for highly evolved individuals, spiritual masters, or initiates who had undergone years of rigorous moral and psychic training. The average person was not expected to be able to read the records. It was a remote, lofty concept, part of a complex and hierarchical esoteric cosmology. Edgar Cayce's ability was seen as a rare and miraculous gift, not something that could be learned in a weekend workshop. The major shift occurred with the rise of the New Age movement in the 1960s and 70s, and has accelerated dramatically with the advent of the internet. The New Age ethos is deeply democratic and anti-authoritarian. It emphasizes personal experience and the idea that everyone has the innate ability to connect with the divine directly, without the need for an intermediary priest or guru. This philosophy was applied to the Akashic Records. The idea that only special masters could access them was replaced by the belief that it is everyone's birthright. This led to the development and popularization of specific techniques like the pathway prayer process, designed to make accessing the records easy and accessible to anyone who is interested. The concept moved from the esoteric lodge to the public workshop. Books, classes, and online courses began to proliferate, teaching people how to read their own records and the records of others. The Akashic Records became less of a mysterious cosmic chronicle and more of a practical tool for personal development and self-healing. This democratization also led to commercialization. Today, the Akashic Records are a significant part of the spiritual marketplace. You can find thousands of professional readers online offering sessions for a fee. There are certification programs that promise to make you a qualified practitioner. The language used to describe the records has also shifted. It's often framed in terms of self-help and empowerment, using phrases like unlocking your soul's potential, or accessing your soul's blueprint. While this has made the concept accessible to a much wider audience, it has also stripped away some of its original mystique and gravitas. It has been transformed from a profound, world-altering secret known only to a few into a branded spiritual service available to the many. Number 2. Does this concept appear in modern media? The core idea behind the Akashic Records, a universal repository of all knowledge and experience, is a powerful and recurring trope in modern science fiction and fantasy. While the specific term Akashic Records is not always used, the concept appears in many forms, often updated with technological or futuristic language. It speaks to our fascination with information, memory, and the nature of reality itself. In science fiction, the concept is often presented as a form of cosmic database or a naturally occurring galactic network. The TV series Doctor Who features something similar in its Matrix, a vast computer system on the Time Lord's home planet of Gallifrey, which stores the knowledge and consciousness of all Time Lords. In the Star Trek universe, the Q Continuum is a plane of existence inhabited by omnipotent beings who have access to all of time and space, a kind of living Akashic record. The film The Matrix presents a simulated reality where all information is data, and a skilled hacker can access and manipulate it, echoing the idea of a reader accessing and interpreting the records. In fantasy, the idea often takes on a more magical or mystical form. In the Avatar: The Last Airbender series, the spirit world contains a vast library watched over by a spirit named Wan Shi Tong, who claims to know 10,000 things. It's a physical manifestation of a place that holds all the world's knowledge. In the world of video games, the Assassin's Creed series uses the Animus, a machine that allows a person to access the genetic memories of their ancestors. This is a biological version of the Akashic Records, where history is encoded in DNA rather than a universal energy field. The idea is the same: the past is not truly gone, but is stored and can be revisited. These examples show how the fundamental concept of a universal record resonates in the modern imagination. We have replaced the metaphysical Akasha with technology like supercomputers, genetic code, or digital simulations, but the core desire remains. It is the desire to know everything, to understand the past, to see the connections between all things, and to find our place within the grand, overarching story of the universe. Pop culture acts as a mirror, reflecting these deep-seated spiritual and philosophical questions back at us in a form we can easily understand and engage with. Number 1. Does it matter if it is real? After exploring the origins, the methods, the beliefs, and the skepticism, we are left with the ultimate question: are the Akashic Records real? The honest answer is that it is impossible to say with any certainty. There is no objective scientific proof of their existence. And yet, there is an enormous body of subjective personal testimony from people who claim the experience has been real and profoundly life-changing for them. So perhaps a more useful question is this: does it matter if the records are a literal external place? For many, the literal truth is paramount. They believe they're connecting to a genuine, non-physical dimension of reality, and the validity of their experience depends on this being true. For the skeptic, the lack of literal truth means the entire phenomenon is a delusion, a product of wishful thinking and psychological quirks. But there is a third path, a middle way. This path suggests that the power of the Akashic Records lies not in their objective reality, but in their function as a tool for introspection and meaning-making. Whether a person is tapping into a cosmic library, their own deep subconscious, or the collective unconscious of humanity, the process is the same. It is a journey inward, it is an act of deep listening, it is an attempt to find the story that gives context and meaning to one's life. The narrative that emerges from a reading, a story of a past life, a piece of advice about one's soul purpose, can act as a powerful catalyst for change. It can help a person see their life from a new perspective, forgive themselves and others, and make choices that are more aligned with their deepest values. The human mind thinks in stories. We understand ourselves and the world through the narratives we create. The Akashic Records, in this light, can be seen as a sacred way of creating and interacting with the most important story of all, the story of our own soul. It doesn't need to be factually verifiable in a laboratory to be emotionally and spiritually true for the individual. Its value is not in its probability, but in its utility. Does it help a person to be more compassionate? Does it help them heal from trauma? Does it give them a sense of hope and purpose? If the answer to these questions is yes, then the experience has been a success, regardless of the ultimate metaphysical reality of its source. In the end, the search for the Akashic Records may be just another name for the timeless human search for self-knowledge and our place in the cosmos.